All right, yeah, great first day. Great to be back on the field. We're obviously doing spring a little bit earlier than we've started in the past, and we felt like with the roster that we've been able to accumulate, having such a high percentage of our entire roster already here for spring, that really pushed us to get out here a little bit earlier to start spring, to go ahead and get these guys on the field and get going. And so, a good first day. Guys flew around. You notice some of the improvements of the guys that have returned, and then obviously it's kind of fun for us to get a first look at the transfers and obviously all the high school guys that came in here this spring. In terms of availabilities, I know I'll get asked, so I know you guys are going to really appreciate this. These are the 6 guys that won't participate, or if they do, will be certainly very limited in spring. Tanook Hines, Chasen, Killian O'Connor, Christian Pierce, Justin Tanu, and John Tez. All of those 6 guys will all be very limited, may be able to do some individual stuff a little bit later on, but all recovering from some off-season procedures and all of that. So other than those guys, we expect to have a lot of the roster available, expect to be able to get a lot of good work. And I mean, this is, I would say, for every coach in the building, we've never had a spring practice, none of us in all of our years, where we had this high a percentage of your full roster already here for spring, which is a huge advantage, and it puts a lot of obviously importance on having really quality practices, having your whole, basically your entire squad here. So from there we'll hit questions.
Given the sheer just number of young guys, freshmen especially here, how does that change your approach to spring practice, or maybe even just change the tone of things out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're combining that with obviously some changes defensively. We're not totally scrapping what we did. This is not like we're going to some radically different system, but there certainly are going to be some changes and getting used to the new coaches, Coach Patterson and some of the new coaches on staff. Certainly with Coach Eckler coming in from a special team standpoint and joining with Coach Doherty, going to be a few changes there. And so, yeah, I think you're trying to balance all 3 of those things. But if you were to say what are maybe 3 really big keys this spring, you would have a hard time not naming, obviously, getting acclimated to the new things defensively and on special teams, and then getting acclimated to this roster. It is, but between over 30 new high school guys, and then you got some of the transfers that we welcomed into the program, there's a lot of new guys on this roster. And so I think getting a look at these people, seeing, where they're at in terms of their development, where they got to go. I think the evaluation process is going to be really important. And the other great thing about having this many people available is the more people available, you have, the more reps you can do. The more reps you can do, the more they can develop, the more we can all evaluate and get an idea going into, later this spring and this summer of where we're at, and obviously the improvements that we need to make at that point.
Coach, a little different setup than last year. You started spring camp, went all the way through. This time you're taking a break. What's the thought process with that?
Yeah, spring break just kind of naturally falls during that time, and so we're gonna pack it in a little bit tighter here. So we're going some back-to-back days. Tomorrow will be our first back-to-back day, but that's going to happen pretty often during the spring practice period. When we looked at it with the way the roster was, we just felt like it was the right thing to get these guys on the field faster. Not wait until after spring break, which at times is what we've done. And so we're going to get basically half the spring done. We'll have spring break, and then we'll come back and do the rest of spring. And the great thing it's going to provide for us is an opportunity to have another training cycle after spring ball. When you finish later, you're kind of limited on what you can do training-wise, then they're into summer pretty quickly. And so we had a good 7-week cycle here to start. We'll get spring ball basically done in a matter of 5 weeks, and then we'll have a nice cycle after to come back and train these guys, make some of the corrections from spring ball, and get ready for summer.
What's the specific objective, if any, probably more than one objective for spring ball first week?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, you're limited on what you can do contact-wise the first 2 days. So, we try to focus in on fundamental development, skill development, learning the schemes. Obviously, you're going to focus a little bit more on the passing game those first 2 days because you're not in pads. And once we get in the pads, certainly that's going to change on Friday. We'll allow, obviously, you start to get the battles at the line of scrimmage. You start to see all these guys from a physical standpoint of what they provide. And again, I think evaluating that is so key, whether it's a returner that has really worked hard in the weight room and maybe has really improved their physical skills. A new guy, whether it's a freshman or a transfer that we're getting here and we're really seeing for the first time live, and we're seeing the physicality and how they play and their fundamentals. We'll certainly start to dive into that. But you have to get off to a good start. The rules are the way they are, so we'll push through these first 2 days, but obviously we'll be eager to get the pads on.
What was the thought process behind bringing in new leadership at special teams?
I think just the availability to get somebody that we felt like could come in and make a difference. Somebody that had a little bit different, a little bit different background in terms of kind of their coaching pedigree. And I think when we evaluated it, there's certainly been some areas here that we've been really strong special teams wise, and then there's been some areas that have held us back that we obviously need to do better, just plain and simple. And we felt like the combination of Coach Eckler and Coach Doherty would be pretty tough to beat. I mean, our specialists here, which has been the chief thing that Coach Doherty's been involved with, we've had Ray Guy winners, we've had Brian Seri takes over and does a phenomenal job. We could probably have the best 1-2 kicker combination maybe in college football right now. Then you look at what Coach Eckler's done in his career, on top of being able to be involved defensively and coach a position there, made sense. It was just something for us. It was looking to improve, and then also I think just realizing that as that process went on, that we had the opportunity to get somebody that we thought could come in here and make a difference in our program.
With Tanuk out especially, what do you hope to see out of that?
Say it again one more time.
With Tanuk out especially, what do you hope to see out of that young crop of receivers?
It may be a blessing in disguise. I mean, some of that happened, with Lemon was out last spring, and we ended up pumping a bunch of those reps into other people, and I think that there were some guys that benefited from that, and so that's what needs to happen now. We're going to have some new faces in there, and it puts so many reps on guys like KDW and Tron and Luke Weaver and Terrell, and get returners like Corey Sims, Roe Ison, Mosley, Zach. I mean, all these guys, they're going to get a ton of reps, and they all need them. And so obviously we'll get Tanuk back, and then receiver is really kind of the one position where we've got a couple of guys in the class that aren't here yet as well. So the receiver position will feel a little bit different certainly when we get to fall, but what a phenomenal opportunity for all those other guys to develop and to take advantage of those reps. And we're going to need that. We're going to need, you look like last year, we had some guys come in and really step up. Had some returners that got better. We had guys like Tanuk that came in and made an impact. We're going to need that to happen again. And so you like that. You never want somebody out, but honestly, I kind of like the way it's setting up because we can't pump all these reps into these guys.
Luke Weaver was somebody that kind of stood out today, the way he was moving. Mm-hmm. What did you guys see in him that made him a priority for y'all?
Yeah, very physically gifted. We were impressed with just his size, his play strength. He's got documented speed, just an explosive guy that we felt like we could develop. One of the biggest keys for him will just be staying healthy. He had a few injuries that he had to battle through in high school, but he's a guy that we said the more we got to know him and see his skills, like if this guy stays healthy and allows us to develop him consistently, I think he's got a chance to be a heck of a player. So yeah, he's like a lot of these freshmen. He did a nice job of coming in a lot during the recruiting process, being around our program a lot. And so I think his familiarity is pretty good with what we're doing. I think he's acclimated well and did some good things here on the first day.
Let's see one more.
What's the biggest question about this team that you want to answer this spring?
Ooh. It's early, man. There's a lot of questions. I mean, if I would just say based on the entire team, I think it would be, how do we gel a transfer class, a 35-person high school class, a couple other newcomers that we'll have with a strong returning nucleus as well. I've seen a little bit. We've kind of gotten painted on the outside as this crazy young team. Like we do have some really good youth, and I know that class has gotten some attention in terms of how that recruiting process played out. But we got a lot of guys that have played a lot of ball here. We've got experience at some positions that you really like to have experience with. So to me, it's not as much the youth of it; it's just combining all them together and creating one cohesive unit. And I think, outside of any specific side of the ball, that's probably the biggest challenge for us, because you like the talent that we have, you like the returners. I love the guys we brought in, but we got to, it's like, one of the best sports franchises of all time said, you're not collecting talent, you're building a team. We got talent, now we got to build a team.